overseas looking nice. Room service if I like, I order twice. Hibachi, got the gravy on the rice. Rolling in Mexico
Pittsburgh
like
Steelers fans, welcome in to a Sunday night edition of the Steelers Q&A. Welcome back. It's good to be here with you live on a Sunday night. I've got a special guest with me from around the 412. It's Zachary Smith. It's Smitty. What's up, Smitty? How you doing tonight? Welcome into the Steelers Q&A and Steel Curtain Network.
What's going on, Jeremy? Appreciate you having me. Yeah, around the 412 Steelers afternoon drive with my guy Alan Saunders. I do just a couple podcasts, put out like 8 every week, something like that, just a few.
Yep.
But I appreciate you having me on here. Excited to chop it up.
Yeah, and sorry to give you one more, but I really appreciate you wanting to come on it and just chat, man. So
yeah, absolutely.
This one's like no pressure, so it's a lot of fun. You know, we don't have a script, we don't have anything crazy to talk about, but I really do appreciate you taking the time to hop on with me. And this is our first time doing anything together, but it's gonna be fun.
It's funny. We've been under the same umbrella here for a little bit. We put out the podcast through Fans First and everything like that. Steelers Afternoon Drive and around the 412. So it's funny. I've been doing stuff with Jeff now for a while, but yeah, this is the first time that you and I have connected outside of Twitter. So excited to do so, and probably do it quite a bit in the future, I would assume.
I would hope so. It's been fun for the first minute and 45 seconds here, so let's keep it rolling. So for this show, like if you guys are new in the chat or whatever, and we're gonna have lots of the regulars, and we appreciate everybody who tunes in regularly. But give us your questions. Pop those in the comment section. We'll get to them. We'll talk about them, and we're just gonna chat some Steelers tonight. And Smitty, I wanted to kind of start this off with like the recent activity of the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? And this is supposed to be the slow season, but Omar Khan and company keeping us busy with things to talk about, and not necessarily the slow season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this roster's been churning and turning the last couple years, continues to do so. How'd you feel about the most recent moves? The Dolphins interacting with the Steelers and some of the moves made recently there.
Yeah, well, first off, like you said, just before we talk about that move specifically, if it doesn't work out again this year, it won't be due to a lack of complacency. Like, they are very much not complacent with the results that they've been getting. They've been turning over every stone trying to improve this roster. This most recent move, Minka Fitzpatrick going back to Miami, Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith coming back. It's interesting how the news was put out there piece by piece, because it's like, at first, you're just thinking Jalen Ramsey's being added to a secondary that still includes Minka Fitzpatrick, and you're like, oh my goodness, like these corners, these safeties, this is going to be one of the best secondaries, if not the best secondary in football with this group. And then you find out Minka's part of the trade, you're like, oh, like, is it 1 for 1? That's kind of the way that it seemed like for a second. And then, oh, Jonnu Smith's coming back in the deal. So I'll be honest, if you want to view this as a 1 for 1 of Jalen Ramsey for Minka Fitzpatrick, because I feel like it's fairly equivalent there, then they got Jonnu Smith in a 7th round pick for a 5th round pick, which every team in the NFL should make that trade. Even if you feel like it's not a great fit, you make that trade and you figure out how the pieces fit afterwards. But to be honest with you, Jeremy, I don't view Minka Fitzpatrick and Jalen Ramsey as a 1 for 1, despite the fact that, I mean, look, jersey's right there. The Around the 412 podcast that you mentioned was the first Pittsburgh podcast to have the opportunity to interview Minka. Love Minka. The last couple years, he has not had the ball production. And whether that's him or the way that he's being utilized in the defense, you can't make the amount of money that he is making at that position without having the ball production. So to me, I wasn't viewing this as a 1 for 1 for Ramsey and Minka and then the other pieces being for each other. I think just from a perspective of getting more talent, the Steelers made out like bandits on this deal. Yeah. And I can't figure out why Miami would do it. Now, whether or not that means these pieces, Jonnu Smith is going to fit within this offense and Jalen Ramsey's going to fit within this defense, and they're going to properly utilize him in that slot spot outside a little bit, maybe playing free safety. That's TBD. But there's without a question that they made out on this deal on the surface.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think that the very fact that Omar Khan sits back and just ends up with, I don't even know. It feels like he just ends up with these great deals falling in his lap, but he has to be putting in the work. I mean, we hear it all the time, right? That so-and-so's been in contact with the Steelers, or the Steelers have contacted about so-and-so. And the Jonnu Smith trade, reports or I guess more along the lines of like weariness with his current situation, right? Those reports were heavy early on, and the Steelers were in on those discussions. It seems like every player that's released or in cap or salary trouble or whatever, the Steelers are mentioned in some way, shape, or form, and some of that's obviously just fans. Wish casting, right, on
Yeah.
some of this, but a lot of it
Mhm.
too is that Omar Khan's got his fingers in the pot, and he's stirring things up, and he ends up landing stuff like this. And you're absolutely right. The Steelers get dogged a lot in recent years for moving on from guys too late. And I know they got back a couple older players, I guess, technically with this trade, but you can't
Sure.
fault them for trying to move on from a guy as you're starting to see decline and not too late. And then you get a guy in Jalen Ramsey who can do more things for you probably in this defense and the evolution that Mike Tomlin's trying to do. It did make a lot of sense, even without Johnny Smith.
And what in the world is the vision with Chris Greer in Miami? I think that's the thing is
Yeah,
like in
that is
Pittsburgh, regardless of if things are working out right now, like I don't all of a sudden view this team as a Super Bowl contender. I mean, you know, I think they're in a better position now to win a playoff game than I would have said that they were. But, you know, let's talk at the end of the season and see where they're at. For Miami, like what is they just gave Jalen Ramsey and Tyreek Hill extensions last offseason right before the season. And now they've traded Jalen Ramsey and Tyreek Hill. There was discussions about it not that long ago about doing the same with him. What are they doing down there? I have no idea. And that's why the point of that was regardless of if things work out or not, specifically with these older players, like they're not mortgaging the future with any of this either. Look at the amount of draft capital the Steelers have going forward. That's why regardless of if it works in 25 or not, I have a lot of faith in what the vision is long term under Omar Khan.
Yeah, they've been walking a tightrope between prepping for this year, staying competitive in 2025, and not mortgaging the future to do so. And I mean, without seeing the finished product, it's hard to say that it's been a brilliant strategy overall, but it has kind of worked in their favor, and it makes a ton of sense. Whereas you contrast that with a team like Miami, and I agree with you. Greer's been spending too much time in the sun or something. I don't know. That roster's funny anyway. And then you make these moves. It just kind of doesn't make sense. The cap savings they got didn't do enough to get them out of something that it would have made sense to do this anyway. So I think it's very interesting. And one question that we talk about a lot, you know, on our platforms and whatever, but AFL 67 says, my question, why do you think the national media is so clueless on the Steelers team? It does seem like the narratives surrounding the Steelers in the national media, they don't focus on the right talking points with the team. It's always, well, you know, they've got an old quarterback and they missed out on all these other quarterbacks and they haven't had such and such, and all they do is win, and they don't win in the playoffs. And so to me, the factor that they're missing, or they're missing the fact that the Steelers are putting their chips in on 2025 and the future at the same time. And there wasn't much else option outside of Aaron Rodgers coming in that was going to make them competitive this year anyway. So where were they going to go if they didn't go this route?
Yeah, and you know the other options, say bringing Justin Fields back, right? Like I think that they would have liked to. Actually, I mean, I know that they would have liked to, but they didn't want to commit the dollars in 26. Like he got way more guaranteed money than I think they were anticipating. And if that was going to be the case, you know, so be it. They're going to let him walk and just focus on 25, while again not mortgaging what they really wanted to do in 26, which was move up and select what is hopefully their franchise quarterback for a long time. So I don't know, but I think honestly, from a national media perspective, a lot of this, and I don't say this lightly because I never wanted to be this person to like make it seem like, oh, they just hate my team or whatever. But like, we know that this football team, how it drives engagement. It's very easy to get this fan base riled up, and you mention the name and you know that the engagement that will follow. So I think there's certainly part of that needs to be in the discussion too. And just because of the way that media is done now, I mean, most of it is done through social media and click and impression driven. So I think that's part of the conversation as well.
One area where I've been frustrated with the media in just the last couple of days has been, and fans as well, but has been the response to Omar Khan getting an extension. from the Steelers. Everybody was like,
Yep.
he's got no playoff wins and they don't have a quarterback. And that's such a shallow viewpoint on this. I don't understand it. I think that he's done more than enough to deserve an extension after 2 off seasons of doing all he can to keep a roster in contention that needed overhauling in several areas and was going through, for the last 25 years or so, an unprecedented quarterback conundrum. I think he's navigated it well, and he absolutely deserved that extension.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned this before, but they're trying to thread this needle of remaining competitive while understanding they're not fully there yet, and also not mortgaging the future in the process of remaining competitive. And, with what they're doing right now, I think just the way that they're accumulating assets, as well as building the foundational parts of this team, TBD in terms of if Broderick going to left is going to work, or, I mean, I'm super bullish on Troy Fautanu, but of course we do need to see it on Sundays before we can certainly be sure. But the investments have been there on the sides of the trenches, regardless of if they work out. You can't say that it's because of a lack of investment that's been made there. So yeah, and to your point, in terms of the quarterback thing, I would say that it's the opposite of that. Like, you're right, he hasn't drafted one yet, which is exactly why he gets this extension, because I think you got to see what that dart throw is going to look like and how that player pans out to properly assess what the Omar Khan era is going to be. Now, if that flops, then it's going to be a different conversation. Because then you can go back. Every team in the NFL is going to have holes in their roster. It's about which teams can minimize those and, have it be at, I don't want to say positions of less importance, if you will, or have that dude at QB where, you don't necessarily need to have that type of receiver room. But we've seen certainly Omar Khan, the wide receiver room is going to be a big talking point. We're going on 18 months now of this being a conversation. And the sign to me of a good GM, because every team does have holes, is one that doesn't leave those holes the same the following season. There's a very good chance, and we could talk about the wide receiver position here, that they're going to go into this season with a lot of faith in a wide receiver room that, at least in my viewpoint, I would want, say, a Roman Wilson leap happening or Calvin Austin taking yet another leap from last year. Yeah. Those should be things that if they happen, it's great that it happened, but you shouldn't be banking on them in the way that it looks like this team might.
Yeah. That was the next question I was going to pull up is from Aton Ford, one of our regulars. Do you think Khan is still shopping for a wide receiver too? I think the shopping's always being done. It's whether the transaction happens. And you had mentioned, I was listening to, I think y'all's most recent episode of the 412 talking about Gabe Davis and how you think that that's probably going to happen. But what are your thoughts on wide receiver overall, though? And like you mentioned, they have a lot of faith in Roman Wilson. Probably does that keep them from shopping too hard? I guess would be my question here.
Here's the thing, just because of best case scenario for Roman Wilson, I still don't think that should prevent you from getting a guy, at least for 2025, right? Because a guy like Gabe Davis isn't somebody that you're looking at and saying, oh, this is a guy for the long-term future. The attractive thing about him is he's the wide receiver version of Russell Wilson last year, where you're signing him for the vet min because Jacksonville's paying him.
Right.
So he helps out for 2025 and lets you do whatever you might do in 2025, but you still need to have that investment in 2026, or again, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, those guys contribute in such a way in 2025 where it's a pleasant surprise. And you're like, oh, okay, these guys are going to be more impactful down the road than we felt like they were going to be. The reason that I brought up Gabe Davis is I'm very hesitant. Don't get me wrong, I am not an insider. But anytime that I get information, I'm like, I got to check with 2 people here that aren't connected to each other, and I want to see what they're saying here. Heard the same thing from both people. Steelers very confident that they're going to land Gabe Davis right before training camp. So I'm sticking to my guns on this. If I get cold takes exposed or whatever they call it, so be it. But I'm rolling with it. And again, this is not me necessarily endorsing, saying I love the move or whatever. I will say, when we've talked about this in the past, my response to my feelings on Gabe Davis, I think better fit for what this team does offensively than he necessarily is as a player. But they can make it work because of that.
Sure. If my argument against Gabe Davis has always been, and I didn't think this, but if you thought that George Pickens and DK Metcalf were redundant skill sets, Gabe Davis is DK Metcalf light. I mean, you want to use him the same way. It is That's how he was using Buffalo, at least. Maybe that's where I'm looking at it from, like when he was used to his best.
No, I mean you're right with worse hands.
downfield
Yeah.
threat and maybe the slants, but so it is more redundant. But I mean, in this type of offense, you can have two of those guys on the outside and work the middle of the field with some of the underneath stuff, like we're talking about with Johnny Smith and maybe Calvin Austin the third and Roman Wilson. But I guess the next thing I wanted to get to in this conversation is obviously, in your opinion, then the Johnny Smith does not answer the wide receiver 2 or the pass catcher 2 designation for the Steelers. And I agree with that. He's more of a specialized player. You've got to use him in a very specific way. So how do you see this tight end room, the work being broken down here? Because 3 guys, I look at Patty Fry, I look at Johnny Smith, and I look at Darnell Washington. I think these are 3 very, very different players you want to use in different ways. My thought was it's going to be hard for Artie Smith to not tip his hand by which one of those guys they have on the field. So I think we're going to see a lot of 13 this year to get all 3 on the field. But how do you see that tight end room working out, I guess?
I mean, you brought up a lot of things that I was going to within there. I think we are going to see a lot of 13. They ran at like 6% last year. They weren't very good at it. I think that's going to be the questions. Are they going to be better replacing that Michael Pruitt with Johnny Smith in this case? But yeah, I mean, the thing to me why, like, again, I like getting Jonnu in this trade because you basically got him for nothing in terms of the draft capital. You got to figure out how to use him, and you're putting a lot of faith in Arthur Smith to be able to do so. But the reason why I felt like it was weird when they originally showed interest, like weeks prior to the trade happening, was because he does a lot of the same stuff as Freiermuth, and he's like, they're good at a lot of the same things. Like, Jonnu's definitely better after the catch. But in terms of like just like a move F tight end, like that's what you're talking about with Jonnu. Somebody pointed out to me, it's like, oh, look at the percentage of snaps that he lines up on the outside. And it's like, yeah, that's being designated that way, but they're sending him in motion. He's not actually running the route on the outside. Like, I understand what you're looking at. I understand the information where you're getting it. That's like, go watch the tape though. That's not how he's not playing at Z. So like, I think that there's a lot of misconception based off people looking at snap alignment with the way that this is going to work and what the skill set is there. It's going to be interesting. Like, do Cal or Roman lose out on some slot snaps because of Jonnu or Pat being lined up there? I think that's the big thing. My concern, to be quite honest with you, and it shouldn't happen, again, this is more of going to be a coaching thing, is do we see a decrease in snaps for Darnell Washington and them trying to like pigeonhole a role that shouldn't necessarily be there for Jonnu or Pat because of just trying to keep those guys on the field all the time? That's my concern. But again, that's not on the player, that's on the coaching staff to figure out how these pieces are going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you make the move, you should have a plan in place for it. And one thing I do think Arthur Smith doesn't get enough credit for across fan circles, at least, is his adaptability. We've seen like 5 different offenses that he's operated specifically because of which quarterbacks are playing. And I think that he's going to be fairly adaptable to what Rodgers wants to do. Obviously, Rodgers played in a similar system in Green Bay with Matt LaFleur. And like the basics are the same. The parts you lean on are the same, but the tweaks that can be made for each player, I think Arthur Smith is underrated in that aspect. How he handles it with this iteration of a Steelers roster is going to determine, I guess, the ceiling more or less for this offense. I kind of feel like the floor of this team is what it is, and that's going to be the case as long as Mike Tomlin is head coaching a fairly decent defense or a really good defense, right? And from there, the offense kind of dictates what the ceiling is. And maybe that falls on the quarterback. Maybe that falls on what the offensive coordinator can do with this group of players. It's just hard for me to envision a world where this offensive collective, as we see it today, is worse than last year, even with some of the tweaks that they're going to have to make and a lot of first-year type stuff that you're going to see with so many changes.
Yeah, even when things were going well at times for the Steelers offense last year, it was still because like somebody, it was a clip on Hard Knocks, a Ravens coach talking about Russ saying that he was all layups and threes.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's either checking it down or he's getting you over top of the moon ball. And there were times where it was certainly effective and stuff like that. But I think one of the appealing things is like Aaron's actually like going to use the middle of the field. He can see over the line of scrimmage, unlike Russ.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think it just opens up a lot more of the playbook. I think that's why there was a lot of contention between Art and Russ towards the end of last year, was because like Art had to throw out half of his plays because they couldn't
Yeah.
utilize certain portions of the field. So yeah, I mean, great point. Like this defense kind of sets what this baseline is going to be, and the offense would determine what the ceiling is. But I think as you look at it right now, I've seen a ton of chatter the same way. Just going back to the original point there, like to me at least, my opinion is the addition of Jonnu Smith certainly does not change their need for another wide receiver that can line up at Z. Like they just don't have a player to line up in that spot. Even if you want to say like right now, like who's out there in a two wide receiver set as the opposite receiver on the outside? Is it Robert Woods? Is it Ben Skoranek? Because like I don't think it's gonna be Calvin or Roman out there.
Yeah. Yeah. You got, well, I don't know. I guess I would say if one of those two guys gets it, it would be Roman Wilson, but I just don't know.
I agree
We
if
just
it was
haven't
one of
seen
them,
anything out of him yet. We can't make any determination on what Roman Wilson is or isn't going to be because, I mean, 0 snaps, right? Basically.
Five snaps against the Raiders last year, right?
Yeah. I think that's right. It was 5 snaps, 0 targets, right? He wasn't targeted, and we just don't know. I like what I've seen from some of the clips coming out of OTAs, but that's OTAs, and every year I'm like, I'm not going to get excited about no OTAs, man. Wait till training camp. So.
Yeah, maybe training camp get a little bit of juice. Oh, like the one-on-ones I live for.
Yeah.
The wide receiver DB one-on-ones and backs on backers. That's what gets me juiced.
Yeah, man. I've been out to training camp once now, and that was the that was the Kenny Pickett second season. All the chips are in. I'm super excited about this, and it was kind of funny in hindsight. I go back and I'm like, man, Mason Rudolph looks really good out here. It turns out he was the one that got him to the playoffs at the end of the season. But yeah. So we had a comment earlier, and I can't find it again. I wanted to bring it up, but they were saying Omar Khan deserved his extension based solely on the fact that he was willing to move off of Kenny Pickett when he did, right? And just say, you know what, we're not going to deal with this anymore. You're not my pick anyway. Let's figure this thing out a different way.
Yeah, I think that that speaks to kind of that first point that we were talking about there with the amount of turnover that we've seen, where it's just like if things fail, it's not going to be because they were complacent. They're going to turn over the stones on this roster to try to attain a different level of success than the previous season. Like there's been a short leash, honestly, in terms of this roster as of late. I mean, how many pieces are still even here from 3 years ago? Like, I mean, it's crazy to see the amount of turnover that's taken place. So yeah, I mean, again, I think that there's a lack of patience, and I understand it because I say lack of patience, but I know that the playoff drought goes back longer. I was talking about with the Khan era here. To rebuild this roster because of all credit to Kevin Colbert. He was great for a long time, but those last few drafts clearly were not very good, and Khan had quite a bit of work to do to kind of get out from under that. I think that they're on the right path, but it's going to take time. And quite frankly, like none of it really matters if they don't hit on the quarterback. So that is what is ultimately going to dictate how this tenure goes.
Yeah, it really is. It's going to define that era, the Khan era, for sure. Let's see. I was going to ask. Going back to like the topic of the Steelers not sitting on their hands when it comes to making changes and things like that. Do you think that this is coming just from me? So I haven't seen this in the chat or anything, but just from me, because this has kind of been my thought the last couple seasons. Like, I get roster turnover. That's something that happens with most teams every year to a fairly high degree. The Steelers higher than a little bit normal. I think a lot of fans have been clamoring for coaching changes, and the Steelers haven't really made any of those. I mean, they changed the defensive backs coach this year, I think, and I think I like that move, but they didn't move on from either coordinator, and not calling for Arthur Smith to go anywhere, but they didn't move on from Terrell Austin. Obviously, they haven't moved on from Tomlin. Is there a time when roster turnover doesn't cut it anymore, and it's time for coaching turnover to satisfy the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, sure, that one's a little bit harder, I think, to
Yeah.
like figure out because we don't know the full like pool of power, if you will,
Right.
that's
I
taken
totally agree.
place. So it can be kind of hard to figure out exactly like who's in charge of what and things like that. Like people want to say that it's, you know, not Terrell Austin's defense, it's Tomlin's defense. To be quite honest, it's not even his defense. Like they've been running the same defense well before Mike Tomlin was here. So
Yeah.
I think that there's I don't miscommunicate. You know what? Hey, miscommunication is why the defensive backs coach was fired, not brought back. Whatever
Yeah.
you want to say. I think there's a lot of
Sure.
miscommunication along with the fan base too, in terms of not knowing who's doing what and how to kind of divvy the blame, if you will, because of that. I will say the one thing that I was surprised about, just because of they put everything on George's plate, and we saw how he responded to the point where they decided to trade him away, get a wide receiver outside the organization, and then pay that receiver. I'm a little bit surprised Zach Dezzani wasn't one and done because I
Yeah.
think his entire job here was getting George Pickens under wraps, which is a massive job, by the way.
Yeah.
I just feel like that hire was very intentional for George, and it didn't work out. So I was kind of
Yeah.
surprised that he was brought back. The other one that I know people are going to talk about is Pat Meyer. And I think if Troy doesn't get hurt last year and we get to see him play the entire year, that could have been the move that defined whether Pat Meyer was brought back or not. Oh, it's this season. Like this is with all the
Yeah.
investment they've put into that offensive line, this has to be it one way or another for Pat Meyer. And then the other ones you talk about with the coordinator and head coaching, like I mean, we know that they're not moving on. Tomlin could fire Art Rooney tomorrow, I think. Like that's how I feel about the
Sure.
and Artie Smith, you know, they were 11th in offense before that 4-game losing streak. Like, and you
Yeah.
look at the talent that's on the offense, I have no issue with like, sure, as a fan, we're
Yeah,
gonna sit there on a
agreed.
Sunday and call out certain plays or whatever. Overall body of work, the way it looked last year, no problems with Artie. And then again, Terrell Austin, it's like kind of my biggest thing, and this isn't a Terrell Austin thing with the defense. We knew Brian Flores wasn't going to be for long. I don't think that the issue was losing him necessarily. It was not replacing him with somebody else that had the front seven background as a senior defensive assistant.
Yep, I agree. The lack of creativity up front was a big issue as the season progressed. So, it's been a we haven't taken a break yet, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to pause real quick so that I know where to pop in an ad break for the podcast version. If you're listening live, we're not going anywhere, so stay tuned. We'll be right back on the Steelers Q&A after this. All righty, welcome back to the Steelers Q&A. It's Jeremy Betts and Smitty from around the 412. You know, Smitty, I've always said around the 412 until I heard you guys talking about it one time, and I was like, you know what? You're right. It is around the 412, and the thing that settled it for me was last year, rocking around the 412. That made sense with the cadence of the rocking around the Christmas tree song, and I was like, you know, that makes total sense. I'm not from there. My dad's a Yinzer. My dad's born and raised Pittsburgh, so I never lived there. So never got the, you know, did they call it the 412, the 412, whatever. So I always said 412. I don't know if that's something you guys have discussed beyond that, but it's funny.
We actually we were talking about Pat, made fun of him last year. I was up at training camp. I was covering it for a couple days with Alan, helping him out. And Pat saw me standing there. He's walking up the hill, gives me a little head nod, and he just said around the 412. And I didn't notice it at the time, but I had the video. Like I was taking video just of the guys walking up.
That's right.
So then I'm watching it back, and I hear Pat say that, and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta out him on this. So I have it saved now, and every once in a while I'll play it on around the 412.
Nice.
And then like
Drop.
give him crap about it. Yeah.
It's a great drop. I love it. Oh man. Sometimes things don't click in the brain until you actually hear it for the first time, and that's what happened. That was what it was with me. We do have a question in here that I wanted to pop in. Just to kind of sort through it here, John S. asks, what's one thing you think we could look back on and say we should have seen that coming? It's like a 2002 Ford Focus. You hope gets through one more winter, and when it doesn't start, it's a long winter. I guess let's project this out for this current roster. Is there something that maybe in a negative way we would get to the end of this season and we'd say, we probably should have seen that coming specifically for the offense, defense, whatever you want to, whatever direction you want to take this?
Oh boy, I unfortunately have two that come to mind offensively.
Okay.
and I mentioned him already to some degree, is like Broderick Jones. I mentioned I was bullish on Troy at right tackle. I'm not about Broderick at left
Okay.
tackle. Like people that think it's just a matter of, oh, he played, left tackle and that's where he should have been this whole time. So now they're gonna throw him back over there and he's gonna be good. Like that's not how it works. Like if his issues were solely just because of like the directions of his feet or the hand placement or something, it's everything. The mental lapses have been there. I think the injury was certainly part of it, but there's just so many things playing the tackle position beyond what side that you're playing on that he was not doing well. That I just think are cause for concern. So it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of 2025, things go south. We're talking about, oh, we still need a franchise left tackle, or now we need to shift Troy over to that side, whatever it might be, because things didn't work out with Broderick. And to be honest with you, Jeremy, that's why like one thing that I would have addressed this offseason, it didn't need to be like a massive investment. I thought there was a misstep in not signing like a guard tackle versatile offensive lineman. At least a better caliber. Like a Patrick McCarry or something like that, like the Ravens had, somebody of that ilk. I would have liked to have seen that as just like an insurance policy because more than a Calvin Anderson or a Spencer Anderson type.
Right. And you don't see those guys like on cut down day. You don't see a lot of those guys out there because they're so valuable. It is hard to find. So we'll see if they, I think training camp's going to tell them a lot probably about Broderick Jones. And I think that's where I would go too. Is this offensive line. It's like, we maybe should have seen that coming, that maybe it's too young and they're expecting them to be too good, too fast. With some of the swapping over and guys coming off of injuries. Like I think this interior offensive line is going to be just fine.
Oh yeah. I agree.
When you talk about them as starting over the full season, if they stay healthy. And I am pretty bullish on Fautano as well. I don't know why it just feels right. And you're not supposed to make analytical decisions about feelings, I guess, but it feels good for Troy.
Yeah, like who cares necessarily about, but like, I'll just throw this out there because it's my opinion. It's based off this. Not that anybody cares about my personal rankings, but he was my 11th ranked player in that class. Like I was super high on Troy Fautano, and I know they had him at like 7th. So like the fact that he fell to where he did was obviously awesome for them, and they felt like they got great value. Injuries were a concern prior, and that's what happened last year. But it's like that's the thing is people are like labeling him as like this injury prone player, always dealing. But it's like it's isolated things though. It's not like that was related to the same thing, like complete opposite knee. So I don't know. I'd like to think that it's an isolated instance and he's just gonna be healthy from this point on. But I understand like you got to see it on the field and watch it play out. So, but the other one that I was gonna bring up is the wide receiver room. Like I think once again we could be having the conversation where a lack of investment there really burned them down the stretch. If you have a guy like Van Jefferson played like 700 snaps last year, something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
If Robert Woods even plays like half of that, there needs to be a serious conversation about the construction of this wide receiver room.
Yeah, I agree. Let me give you a positive one here that I just want to throw out there because he was everybody's by the end of the draft process and everything. He was probably everybody's favorite running back for the Steelers. But man, Caleb Johnson. I think when we get to the end of the season, we're going to be like, yeah, this dude is the real deal at running back, and we should have seen it coming. He's probably going to be my prediction has been this offseason, but that somewhere in the middle of the season, he's going to be the workhorse back, if you will. And Jaylen Warren's going to have his role, but it would be more reduced to like the third down stuff and maybe like change of pace type stuff. I just think Caleb Johnson is built for that, and I think he's going to mesh just so well in this offense. Totally objective as a draft evaluator, I thought that might be the best player fit to team fit match of any pick in the draft, outside of maybe hate to say it, Mike Green to the Ravens, right? Or something like that.
Malachi Starks also to the Ravens. Yeah.
Malachi Starks to the Ravens. Exactly. So
I mean, I was just saying the same. I mean, you said the entire draft. Certainly among the running backs, I felt like best team player fit because I understand that like I can get on board with the idea that there were some teams that if they drafted Caleb Johnson, I would have been like, does it really make sense with the wide zone scheme that he played in Iowa, and just like some of the stuff that he does, I'm not sure if it would have translated everywhere in the league,
Right.
but perfectly for Arthur Smith, in my opinion. And I think it's a great marriage. So 100% on board with that. I think as a whole, like, the defense, honestly, I think is going to be better. And I know, we haven't even touched on the whole TJ thing, but like, assuming he's going to be all systems go and back in the fold, a second year Patrick Queen in this defense. I love Peyton Wilson, and I know that they're trying to make him a 3-down linebacker right now. We'll see how that transition goes and who even fills out the rest of the off-ball linebacker room. But like, Larry Ogunjobi, I mean, give him credit, but getting Keanu Benton in a more of a role and spending a first-round pick on Derek Harmon, I think you're going to get more return on the value there than what you were getting from Larry Ogunjobi. And then we just talked about, obviously, on the back end of things, I think, despite not having Minka playing free safety, with what they were asking him to do, just basically keep a lid on things. I mean, if that's what you're going to have your free safety do, that's what you're having your free safety do. They're going to be better off making the switch, the 1-for-1 switch from Minka Fitzpatrick to Jalen Ramsey, if that's all you're deploying that guy for.
Yeah.
A healthy Juan Thornhill can do that, and Jalen Ramsey at slot corner, Darius Slay, Joey Porter Jr. I think this defense should definitely even be a step above where they were last year, which was finished like 6th overall, and was before that. Again, I said the same thing about the offense before that 4-game losing streak to end the season. Much better than that.
Yeah. I tweeted it out after the and we'll get to TJ here in a second, but I tweeted it out after the trade that I thought that the Jalen Ramsey addition was just as big for the front seven or like even the front five as it was for the secondary, because you're going to ask him to help in the run game and run support. You're going to ask him to play down low. You're going to ask him to press out of the nickel spot, and he can move outside too. Obviously that's what he's played his entire career, really, but it's just so much versatility now up along the line of scrimmage with physical corners. That only helps the pass rush, and he's such a good run defender from the corner spot as well, and a pass rusher. We saw some pass rush juice out of him, much in a Mike Hilton type form, but he's just so much bigger. He's so impressive to watch, honestly. But I felt like that was as big a move for the trenches as it was for the secondary in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see if they get back to, how they would send like Mike Hilton or even the times Arthur Millette on blitzes from the slot. They did do some of that. I mean, Jalen Ramsey had like 12 pressures last year. They could do some of that stuff with him.
Last year, it was something crazy.
Oh, maybe. But so I'm curious to see if they utilize him in that. But again, that's more the coaching than the player thing. Like, the player can do that. Are they going to ask the player to do that and deploy him in that manner? So, but yeah, I'm very bullish on the defense as a whole. I'm excited to see how all these pieces come together on that side.
Me too. Absolutely. All right. The TJ question is in the chat. PJ Gildernew says, I expect TJ to sign during training camp, but if he doesn't, do you see him playing the season or holding out? What do you think?
PJ asking about TJ. So the fines, for mini camp are what they are. It's like a total of just over 100,000. Training camp, much different story. It is massive fines. I expect TJ's going to be there. Now, what's he going to do? Is it going to look like back into his 2021 negotiations and just there? I think he'll be around, and I think that that's kind of important. I'll be honest. I think that they're there already in terms of the APY. I think they know what that number is. Mm-hmm. I think the holdup is the guaranteed money. The Steelers willing to give 2 years. TJ wanting 3. Yeah, that's based off some stuff I've heard, and also just like knowing how the Steelers like to operate and structure contracts. So I don't know how contentious this is going to be. I think like where we've gotten to right now surprised me a little bit just because of the timeline. Like if we got to training camp and there was still nothing done, then I could see TJ making a little bit of noise. But just based off like him knowing how business has always been done with this organization in the past, it kind of surprised me that there was even like any messaging as early as there was. But yeah, I mean, this is going to get done. In my opinion, I think there's going to be some negotiation there in terms of it. Maybe they end up settling on like half of year 3 being guaranteed, which would bring it to what's 82 plus 21, like 103 million
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it guaranteed, something like that. Maybe that's the number that gets it done. But I honestly, as we sit here right now, have zero doubt that TJ Watt's going to sign his extension.
Yeah. I agree with that. I wonder if the messaging from TJ was just like, maybe he didn't want it to drag out like it did a couple of years ago, and he was trying to maybe force their hand a little bit faster. Jerry Dulac was saying something about contract length being a talking point here and a discussion point here, because of like void years or something like that. The Steelers wanted to spread out his cap hits into 5 years or something like that. Do you think that that plays into it at all?
I mean, again, like if Jerry, so I know a lot of people bag on Jerry, but like it's because a lot of his opinionated stuff, not very good. But like if he's putting out something that is like clearly information, I think it's probably good where it's coming from. So, I have no reason to necessarily doubt that that's maybe the way the Steelers want to structure this, and I get it. It's interesting because, like, the void years and the Steelers doing it and honestly becoming so popular, still relatively new. I feel like the teams really started doing that, like, COVID year, 2020, was really when that became popular. So I don't know. Maybe that is going to be a sticking point, but I honestly feel like if the Steelers are willing to guarantee him fully the first 3 years of this contract, it's already done. And if he was willing to accept just the first 2 years of it being guaranteed, it's already done. Like regardless of how they want to structure this out. So I don't know what it's ultimately going to land at. My guess is somewhere between over 40 million per year, probably max 41. And then, the structure of it having to be somewhere between 105 to 120 guaranteed.
Yeah. I was going to say they need to get triple digits on the guarantees. What triple digits? What am I saying? They need to get, that's a lot more digits than triple digits. But you know what I'm saying? They need to get into the hundreds of millions in guaranteeds to get him probably happy. I just think it's going to get done. The Steelers, where they're at, Mike Tomlin's timeline, right, with his contract and trying to get a rookie quarterback in the fold. I mean, just viewing this from an outside perspective and looking at like when's going to be their next best opportunity to be a Super Bowl contender again. It's probably year 2 if they really hit on the quarterbacks. Probably 2027, and you want TJ Watt here for your best chance to be a Super Bowl contender if that's the case. So I don't see why this would not get done. I know he's 31, but I mean, good grief. He's one of the hardest workers in the league. The injury history, I guess, maybe the concern potentially for longevity.
I mean, it is. I think it's a fair question. Like 3 straight years, you're talking 22 with a pec, 23 he gets hurt at the end of the year and then doesn't play in the playoff game. And then last year, very clearly not the same player after the Eagles game that he got hurt in. So I think it's a valid thing to bring up. But I'll be honest with you, and maybe people could rebuttal and say that's a stupid thing to say. Where else is the money being spent? Like you're talking about, you're not going to have a QB that you're paying for until this contract's already paid out to TJ Watt. So like this is the time now to spend money, and I'll as opposed to haggling over maybe 20 million guaranteed, just get your best player on the books and know that that's done while you're going to have a QB that you're not paying, in my opinion. So ultimately, I think it ends up getting done, but I understand why there's and to me, it's not even about the people keep bringing up like, 40 million. They look at that raw number and don't look at the percentage of the cap that it is and realize it's less of a percentage of the cap than his last contract was. I think that it's just, again, the average general fan doesn't necessarily look into this, and I can't blame them, but I think that the concerns about the injury are real. Wanting to pay him, TJ Watt, $40 million to me shouldn't be if you could guarantee health.
Yeah. And if you're going to make the mistake, I think the mistake you make is paying him and it doesn't work out, as opposed to not paying him, shipping him somewhere else, and he's an all-pro again. That's just my take because of what he means to the franchise as well, the type of player he's been.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like that's kind of hard to take off. Even if it's best for business, I get it. It's kind of hard to take off that fan hat at times.
It is, yeah.
There's, I think that we had the same conversation. There was people that had concerns, obviously about Cam Hayward at his age, giving him a new contract, and look how he paid that off last year. But there's a group of guys that you would like to say they're going to be one helmet guys. TJ certainly falls into that category for a lot of the fan base. I will never blame any fan for feeling how they do as a fan. That's their right to feel that way, however it may be. The only thing that I asked for is consistency, and I don't see a lot of that all the time. Yeah. So, but yeah, my take with TJ is let's get this done. Let's have the best roster possible in 2025. Get the guy in 26 and see where it takes us.
And that cap keeps going up. I mean, by the time that contract's over, it's not going to look bad at all. In my opinion.
I mean, if they sign him before, I mean, just based off the way it's kind of being talked about, I feel like I haven't seen much on Parsons. TJ probably going to get done before Parsons. Parsons' number is going to be above TJ for sure. Like, it's just, and then it's just to keep getting pushed down. So, and that's the other part about this from like
TJ, probably.
An APY perspective. I know that, Cleveland went like $4 million over the second guy. And Daniil Hunter. But that gave the Steelers such a short window of where the APY even could be. That's what tells us it's for sure about the guarantee, because it's not like there's much wiggle room there for what it could be.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Hey, good stuff. Let's see here. I'm trying to go through the chat. I don't see any other big questions specifically that we need to go over, but I did want to see if you had okay, let's pose it this way. So we were talking wide receivers earlier. Is there a wide receiver that you would love to see in black and gold, kind of in that Z role for this year? If the Steelers are going to make a move outside of maybe bringing in a free agent, I don't know, maybe the option for you is a free agent. Who's that guy for you that you think would kind of complete this pass catching core and make them really formidable this year?
Either one of the two guys that I know that they've tried to trade for already from Green Bay, Romeo Doubs or Dontavian Wicks. I think very different players, but both could play in that Z. Dontavian Wicks, I would covet a little bit more. You just don't, guys that separate that way don't grow on trees, honestly. And I know a lot of Steelers fans wouldn't love to hear this. He'd be the Deontay Johnson. He's an elite separator. The hands were a little bit inconsistent last year, but I'm still super bullish on what his upside would be. And then Dobbs, who I think is more likely for them to part with. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but he only has 1 year left on his deal. There's already something that happened last year where he was suspended from the team, didn't practice or something. So maybe there's still some contention there, and that would be his way out. Maybe they're not going to pay him because of, obviously the investments they've made to the wide receiver room elsewhere. But they don't necessarily have to do anything right now. Watson's not going to be back until whenever because he tore his ACL last year. And if they view Savion Williams as more of a running back than a receiver, they don't necessarily have to make a move within their wide receiver room. But either one of those guys, I think, would be that's their best shot of getting a legit wide receiver 2 outcome, in my opinion. That's feasible because people are going to throw out the Terry McLaurin thing or something like that, right? But most plausible that could happen, and I think significantly upgrades this room, I would say Wicks or Dobbs from the Packers.
Yeah. I agree. I like it. I like both those guys. I would covet Wicks a little bit more as well. But Dobbs is he's a bigger body, I think. He might be, I don't know if he's a better blocker. I guess I'd have to go back and check that tape. But, both guys I think would fit better than anything they have now. And I don't think the draft capital that you're giving up would be something that you would cringe over.
Yeah, see, that's what I was saying in terms of I know that they've tried to have a discussion there. They offered a 4th for Wicks or a 5th for Dobbs. Packers shot down both. With them moving, up 1 round more or something like that, get it done. Or the Packers might just not. What reason do they have to not just see how this looks in training camp? They haven't even seen 2 of their wide receivers yet in Matthew Golden or Savion Williams. So they're gonna slow burn that even if they are gonna move on from one. But again, that goes to show Omar and the Steelers not leaving a stone unturned. They're trying.
Yep,
for sure.
Go get Bo Melton after cuts. We'll see. My last question, I guess. I thought maybe it would come up. I've been pretty bullish on Aaron Rodgers in black and gold. I think he's going to have a good year. But in the conversation we had about we should have seen this coming, maybe neither of us brought up Rodgers as either over the hill or bringing a lot of drama with him. I think that was all more of a Jets situation and an enabling problem in that whacked out organization than it's going to be in Pittsburgh. So I didn't bring him up in that conversation. You kind of feel the same way that this Aaron Rodgers thing's probably just going to work, and it's probably not. It might not be like supernova. This team's going to a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, but I just don't see it falling to pieces like a Colin Cowherd has been doomsaying all over the internet for the last couple months.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't talk about it for I just feel like it is what it is. Like I feel like you know what you're getting from Aaron Rodgers in 2025. Last year finished 19th in EPA. I think certainly better obviously in the second half of last year. Not only the addition of Devontae Adams, but just individually looking at him, you could see he was able to plan off that foot. The accuracy was like all over the map in the first half, and I think that was a big reason that came back in the second half of the season. But people bring up like the level of competition and stuff like that. Okay, well, if he was old and washed and sucked, wouldn't he be the bad competition that other teams are feasting on as opposed to the other way around? So, yeah, I feel like Aaron gives you a nice baseline of what he's going to be. Probably be somewhere between the 12th to 20th quarterback in the NFL this year. And I think that they can certainly get away with that. And I'm sure with how quick he gets rid of the ball, I saw somebody bring up this, will mask if the offensive line is losing quick or whatever. But it's not necessarily a matter of if they're getting Aaron killed for me that it would make the Broderick Jones pick then look like a failure. You got to move on. But like just going back and watching, if he's losing every rep, but it's not getting Aaron killed, that doesn't make it good. Right. So I think that's going to be part of the discussion too. But yeah, I feel fine about Aaron. I think you know what you're getting. Honestly, we were talking about the floor ceiling of a Mike Tomlin coach team. I kind of feel the same way about Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback this season.
Sure. It's a good mix. I think it's going to work out just fine. And I'm excited for this year. For a while there, I was kind of like, I don't know what all these moves make or are going to mean, because probably just going to see the same result again. But I think that, looking at the bigger picture, there's a lot to like about process with this team. I don't think the Steelers are as maybe, stuck in the 21st century or whatever, stuck in the 2010s as people want to say they are. I think they've got a little bit more forward thinking in them than is being transcribed onto them. But can
I bring up one more potential addition that I would keep an eye on? This isn't anything that I've heard this year. It's going back to interest last year. We talked about the safety spot. I know that there's a lot of people in the pro scouting department that love Julian Blackman.
Yeah.
They were pushing for him last year. They ended up signing Deshaun Elliott, which obviously has worked out phenomenally. But I wonder if they go back to that with Blackman still on the market and them needing another safety. So I would keep an eye on that one. I know everybody's talking about Justin Simmons, but I think had they not landed Deshaun Elliott last year, it was possible that Julian Blackman would have been the addition.
Yeah, Justin Simmons is the name, but Blackman's the better.
Blackman's
He's
26.
Too, right? He's 26 years old. Yeah. So. I like it. All right, hey, Smitty, I want you to plug a bunch of stuff here. You got a bunch of stuff that goes on with you. Rocking Around the 412 just started for you guys. So go ahead and plug away, man. No shame. Do it.
Yeah, we'll talk about Around the 412 second because there is more to talk about there. But I do Steelers Afternoon Drive with my guy, Alan Saunders, SteelersNow.com. You'll find it over there. YouTube, any of your listening platforms. Again, just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. We got some interviews over there. Just had Christian Kuntz on last week. Some other guys on the team in the coming weeks should be coming on here before we get to training camp. So excited about what we got cooking over there. And then Around the 412, which isn't just Steelers based. We do put out a Steelers episode every week, but we also put out a Pirates and a Penguins show weekly as well. So again, your boy's putting out like 8 podcasts a week. Appreciate the support. That can also be found on YouTube or all your listening platforms. And then going back to 2008. So we've been doing Around the 412 since 2017. In 2018, was looking for a way to give back to the community. We had gotten a little bit of a platform, and we're just super thankful. My mom was in special education her entire life, and my uncle has been a fire chief of a couple departments. I watched how those people in my life gave back my entire life, and I wanted a way to give back as well. So we launched a yearly Christmas mission called Rockin' Around the 412. My mom also came up with a name for that. Shout out to Mama Smitty for that as well. Since 2018, we have provided Christmas for 177 kids in the 724 and 412 areas. We've raised over $40,000 in the process of doing so. What we do, every single penny that is donated goes directly to giving Christmas to kids that otherwise would not have that Christmas, whether they're local families from the school district, or we also started partnering up with the East Rochester Salvation Army Angel Tree. If anybody has ever seen the Angel Tree that they do around Christmas time and is familiar with that, we partnered up with them the last 3 years to start doing that as well in the name of our late friend Dalton Keene. It's awesome story, real quick, how that became a thing.
Sure.
Reached out to his girlfriend to see if we could provide Christmas for her daughter that Dalton had left behind. And like, you know, she was obviously super thankful that we even thought of her and stuff like that. But she was like, you know, we're good from a financial perspective. Do you think that we could do something in Dalton's name instead? And I was just like,
Awesome.
you know, blown away by that. And so we've made that part of the mission now for 3 years in a row to start doing that. So like I said, 177 kids have had Christmas thanks to this mission since 2018. And then what we do on top of that is get a gift card for a grocery store that's local as well to provide a holiday meal for them as well. So it really is, you know, all the fictions of Christmas so that for at least one day, these families are able to enjoy what, in my opinion, they should be able to have every single day. And I had growing up and never questioned where it was coming from.
Right. That's awesome stuff. And all the listeners tuning into this show live and whatever, be sure to check that out. If you can donate, that would be fantastic. And Zachary, you're doing a great job, man. I really appreciate listening to you. I wanted to apologize about all the back and forth and up and downs you're doing with the Pirates. That's just not good for anybody. And so maybe pass off the Pirates portion of Around the 412 to somebody else for a little while.
So here's what we say is the Pirates are what prepare you for sports fandom. Like they are what gets you ready for all the downs of being a sports fan. The Pirates have prepared me for what we would consider this rough stretch as Steelers fans. We don't like, unless you're also a Pirates fan, you don't know what it's like, man. So it prepares you.
There you go. It's preparation for the real world, right? I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. All right, man. I really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate all you guys tuning in, listening in. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. This community is nothing without you guys. So stay tuned to the Steel Curtain Network and Fans First Sports for all of your off-season news and notes on the Pittsburgh Steelers and everybody else. We'll be back next time here on the Steelers Q&A next Sunday. We'll see you then.
Riding on cloud nine, we